Are you ready to learn from an expert how to go from writing something from scratch all the way to getting it published? This is the Scale You podcast, where every season we're exploring different ways that people are scaling themselves. And on season 4, we are exploring a lot of people who scale themselves through publishing their own books and scaling their ideas through it. I am your host, Lacaba. I'm the co-founder and CEO of 2XU, an executive assistant services company, and also the author of the Scale You book, which you guys can check out on Amazon. So if you're ready to ditch the grind, let's go over and scale you. Now, our guest for today is a best-selling author, book strategist and coach, and speaker on a mission to help leaders clarify their ideas and harness their unique story to make an impact. Her background includes impacting more than 100 books in her 15 plus years in publishing, ghostwriting for a Nobel Prize winner in medicine, and leading as executive editor of Sam's Club's Healthy Living Made Simple, a publication that reached around 11 million readers. Her work and writing have been featured in Yahoo, Inc., Insider, Publishers Weekly, Katie Couric, and TEDx Stage. She's also the host of the podcast Beyond Better and holds a master's in writing and editing from the University of Cincinnati. Hey everyone, so please help me welcome our guest today, Stacy. Hey Stacy.
Hi, so glad to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. Like I said before we started recording, I stalked you a little bit, as one does, to kind of get to know you on LinkedIn a little bit. So excited to have someone who is an expert in our topic today. So before we dive into all of that, I'd love to know more about you, your background, basically what got you here.
Yeah, well, like many people in my field, I fell in love with books and writing when I was 7. I read the Chronicles of Narnia. That was like my fall in love with books series. And that same year, this was in 2nd grade, I wrote a poem in the United States, we have state specific poetry contests. And I entered my Idaho State Poetry Contest and I got 2nd, which I always say is like good enough to encourage me to keep going, but not good enough to get to go around my writing. So 2nd place was like the perfect place. And then I just went on for basically the rest of my life, pursued reading and writing. In high school, as soon as I could start taking extra classes around writing that were offered at my high school, then I went and got a bachelor's in writing. Then I went and got my master's in professional writing and editing. Along the way, I've also lived and worked all over the world. So right out of my undergrad, I moved to the Dominican Republic, where I was a high school language arts teacher. And from there, moved to Vietnam, came back, got my graduate degree, and we moved back to Idaho for a little while, and then moved to Thailand, and now I live in Portugal. So this location independence is a really important part of how I show up as an entrepreneur. It's really baked into even how my business was built. And across all of these countries and various things I've done, I've gotten to journey through many stages of the publishing industry. So I started out in magazines and book publishing kind of simultaneously. I was executive editor of a national magazine that had about 11 million readers. It was through Sam's Club, which is owned by Walmart. Then I edited books for about 7 or 8 years, transitioned into ghostwriting, and then now I'm coaching authors. I run a program and I have an author community. Throughout that time, I've worked with, a lot of people will say, oh yeah, I've worked with like 1,000. Okay, but if I talk about books I've actually touched and worked on closely and actually gotten my hands in and supported authors, over 100 books throughout these 15 years, and also have personally written, ghostwritten, or co-authored 18. So just such a joyful journey in this industry. I feel so lucky that I get to do what I do.
I love it. And it's funny because like we have very similar backgrounds as you were running through that. Because like for me, same thing. Like 7 or 8 was when I first also started writing. It was funny because like you mentioned like the writing contest. I won first place on the city level, but the regional level I didn't even top. So that was the same thing of like, it was high enough to encourage me, but like the drop of like, oh, I didn't even place on the regionals. Like maybe I should do better. So it's kind of very similar. And I agree on the love for like what we do as well. Like for a few years there as well, I was a book editor for a publishing company. I mean, I ended up running that publishing company for a few years, and it's very like the feeling of getting someone immortalized is kind of the word that I always used when it comes to like helping other people get published. So I love that you've done that a lot. And Yeah, I want to dive into a lot of that journey. So, on the writing side, what was kind of if you can remember, what was the first thing that you got paid to write?
I started my business when I was living in the Dominican Republic, and I was a teacher at the time, so it was a side hustle. And I started out trying to be a travel writer. That is not, just FYI for anyone listening, that is not a lucrative journey. So I had a lot of exposure opportunities on that journey. But when I realized that I needed to shift direction, I did this challenge for myself where I pitched 30 queries to 30 publications in 30 days. And okay, before AI. So that meant I had to find all this information. I had to read the publication. I had to find their editorial calendar, write the pitch, proofread the pitch, make sure it got to the right place. So this was like 3 to 4 hours of work a day that I was doing to pitch. And 29 did not reply, but one did. And it was a publisher. That was the publisher that ended up offering me my first book contract, for my book, my first book. But they hired me to write a third of a textbook. So I ghost wrote a college textbook. That was my first real publishing opportunity, which is kind of funny to look back because I'm like, wow, it's a good thing that I did good work on that because that could have gone any direction.
Yeah, true. Well, that's fun because like I can imagine it's also kind of a good testing ground because it's like, yeah, it's a college textbook, so you have to make sure that the right info is there. So it's a good kind of walkthrough into a little bit of nonfiction writing. Technically, I think textbooks are generally nonfiction, hopefully. So I can imagine that. That's so cool. So on that, then you've mentioned that was kind of the how you got your first book deal. Now you've written more than that. Do you have a favorite that you've written?
I think that they're the book that I'm probably proudest of. I feel so much love toward every single project I've worked on, but I think is actually the book for YouTube viewers. I have a red book on my shelf behind me, and that's it's called Growing Influence. It's a book that I co-authored with my friend and colleague / mentor Ron Price, and it's a business fable. That was my first time really creating something that wasn't so strictly nonfiction. And although that book came out in 2018, which is really pretty old by book standards, as far as like marketing goes and how you think about like new releases, that book has continued to stand the test of time. In fact, yesterday I got an email from somebody who used the principles of the book and was sending us a thank you note. So that's been really exciting, and it continues. I think something about the fable just really resonates with people. It's a leadership fable, and a lot of people that are trying to grow as leaders and just in their leadership, both personal leadership and leadership of others, you know, they're reading kind of like the same type of books in the same format. And so I think that's part of what struck a chord, but also, you know, I wrote it over months with somebody I really admire. And, you know, we got to have tea in his office and, you know, create this book together. So, yeah, I think that's a book I'm really proud of.
That's super cool. It's a little bit, it sounds like it was very special just because it wasn't just you in a dark room like writing. Yeah. You were able to share it with someone that you like working with as well, because it's another thing to work with someone you don't really like. I'm gonna, right after this, once I open my 50 tabs on my browser, I'll make sure to grab the book just because I love reading business fables more than actual business books a lot of the time. So it sounds like it's a perfect match for me. So tell me more about the latest book that you wrote and got published. What was that about?
Well, as of late, most of the books that I've worked on are other people's books, right? So I'm coaching them, and that's what I've been doing for the last 5+ years. I've really shifted over into coaching. I am writing a book right now on location independence, but that is not out to market. But maybe if it's okay, I'll answer your question, but in a little bit of a different angle because of kind of how I orient to the work now. one of the things that I'm really proud of that the team and I have really worked hard within our business is getting more diverse authors to market for diverse readers. Mm-hmm. And I think that second part is also really important, that we are, the publishing industry at large is very white and very privileged. And so historically across all modes of publishing, whether you're talking traditional, definitely, but even self-publishing and hybrid publishing, because there are a lot of barriers, actually, cost-wise, knowledge-wise, there's so many barriers. For us, getting more authors to market who offer different perspectives, who look at things in different ways from a cultural lens, I'm really proud of that. And so we've had a number of books that have come out through really amazing authors. I could rattle off a ton of names, but I feel like I'm going to miss people. Mm-hmm. But we've had a lot of books come out for like Black women in leadership and Latina women around finance, and actually also a book that's for white leaders, but around being, the topic is cultural humility. So it's just been a really cool experience to get to work on such meaningful projects and to feel like the work that we're doing, aside from being a book, which is enough celebration for me to have just like, yay, books, but mm-hmm. to do work that's actually making a difference in the world, I think is pretty awesome.
That's beautiful. And I agree. Like there's I remember when I was still in the publishing world where it felt different helping someone all the way from like we had authors like all the way from Fiji, where like book writing wasn't even really a thing, but then we had this teenager sometimes where she had a really, really big dream, really, really good book, and then being able to get them published. I love that that's kind of the core of what you do, and I of course I want to cover this, but like on like the day-to-day of like how you work with your clients, what is that process like? Like anyone here who's trying to write a book and it's just sitting in their computer, or maybe even worse, something just on their journal forever, they never actually get it done and out. What's that process like for you to work with someone either from scratch, like they have this book idea and they just want someone to like guide them through, or someone who may have half written something and they just want to get that to the finish line? What was that like for your clients?
Well, I think it's important to know at the start that we really niche in the writing process. So a lot of services or companies out there will take you from idea all the way to market, and even the publicity and marketing around that. I don't do that. I really focus on the writing process, and I'm a book strategist as well as a book coach. So we really work through how do you position that book to help you achieve the thing that you want to in the world, whether that's an impact goal or growing your business or whatever your big vision is behind it. And that also really kind of differentiates how I work with people, because I'm best suited for somebody who, yes, wants to become an author, wants to write the book. That's obviously very important. But also that book, they see it as some mission out in the world in some fashion. Again, it can be any of those. We work with nonprofit leaders or business leaders. So that's important to know, I think, first. When people come to me, they're often at many different stages, right? So some people, they come and they're like, I want to write a book. I have no idea what I want to write about, but here's like the basics of it. And we start from there. Some come in and they have a mostly baked idea. They might even have an outline kind of drafted. Some people come in where they are, they might be in the publishing industry. Maybe you're probably familiar with this. There's an abandonment point we talk about a lot that's around 20,000 words. Yeah. So a lot of people come in around like a little under or over that. And actually for all of them, it's typically, I like to start them at the same place, which may seem a little counterintuitive, but I think it's really important when you begin the process of writing a book that you start from a beginner's mindset. And I take the authors through, we actually start with visioning work, which just is capturing the vision of where they want to go in their life. And we start there. Aww. And then we work through an outlining process, and I take them through this kind of multimodal approach to outlining a book. So we start with writing, we move into a sticky note process, and then we move that into, and then we go through a verbal exploration, and then we move that after some time to percolate and kind of build and play with it into their book outline. And then from that book outline, we work at the high level structure to make sure that's sound. Then we build down for a really detailed outline. We create a writing plan, write the book. And alongside that, so when I work with authors, I have an educational program that I've designed that accompanies coaching. So even if you're working with me in a private coaching capacity, you still follow that education. My group program follows that education. And I also have that education available for purchase so people can do a self-study process as well. But it's really like an iterative step-by-step process to write their book. But I think a key differentiator, and I'm sure you'll have lots to add to these because you're so experienced in this too, is that it's not this process of all these books come in and out comes basically the same book, like, it's just different topics. It's actually teaching people an idea, organizing process, and then helping them understand learn the skill of book writing and understand different structures for nonfiction books, and then write the book that is really their best book that they can produce and get out into the world.
I love that. And it's like one of the things that I really learned when it came to like the book publishing process is it really is kind of a multiplier of what you have. Like if you don't have a lot of ideas, that'll show in your book. If you're someone who's really an expert, that'll show in your book. So I love that your process is very much not too much take you by the hand, but like, hey, let me show you a mirror to what you already have and what you can work on. As well as like I totally have that. I didn't even really think of that specific like 30,000 threshold in my head. It's like, oh, sometimes usually when people are like 5 chapters in, they start kind of like getting bored with themselves and not finishing their books. I love that that's a good threshold to keep in mind, because a lot of people when they start writing, I'm going to write 60,000 words, I'm going to do this and this and this, and then of course you do get lost in the way, especially if you don't have the guidance that you provide them, or if you don't have a full kind of plan on how you want it to look like. It's easy to get lost in the weeds. And I was thinking back as you're telling the examples. I was kind of the same thing with my book. Like I think I wrote it for like a year and I got to 20,500, and I was like, eh. And then it was just like, it was the final push for me this year. I'm like, you know what, I need to finish this. So I understand and see that. What's kind of the process, I guess, for you, because you'll have the best experience with this. What is that? In my head, writer's block is kind of a more of a state of mind. But what are there, other than probably writer's block, where are the places that people usually do get stuck on? Like, where are the places where people just can't get it out of their own head? What kind of stage is that, or what kind of process then do you take them into?
Yeah. Well, I like that you talked about getting stuck in your own head, because most of us, when we go to write, we're looking to achieve a flow state. This process where you kind of lose yourself in the work. And the definition of flow is low levels of self-referential thinking. So when we think about, very meta here, but think about self-referential thinking, it's that self-talk that we get in our own heads, right? And for a lot of authors, that looks like, what's even the point of this? Who would even want to read this? Is this even useful? It's like all these things that we're just chirping around in our heads as we're writing. That is a huge barrier for people in the writing process. And of course, then that can lead to, just not producing as much. If you're sitting down trying to write and all of your negative self-talk is like screaming at you, you cannot hear the goodness that's in your brain to write. One of the things that I like to offer people when they get stuck in that cycle is that, one, solid habits beget creativity. So there was this research review done a year or two ago. They studied most of the quality research on creativity. And I'm going to misquote it, but essentially they said that their findings were that creative genius is actually the result of daily practice, boring habits that you stack into this state that we think of as this you got it or you don't kind of state. And we just know from neuroscientific research that that's just not true. Actually, your habits, your consistency, your discipline, those contribute to your success when you sit down. And having a transition when you move into your writing, even if it's as simple as you close your eyes and you meditate for 1 minute, literally 1 minute on your ideal reader. You think about them, you think about how you want to serve them in the writing, and you take it out of your own head and into an act of service to someone else. It can be such a huge game changer. The other thing that I find is that that people really get stuck in, well, there's two. One is they don't outline enough at the beginning or at all, and they do pretty well for the first 30% to 50% of the book ish, but then they get totally stuck and lost in the last half, and that's because they don't have the plan. But the other one is that people lose momentum, and momentum is so important when you're in this process.
Yeah.
Building that momentum and then maintaining that momentum is your key to success, because when that momentum drops, it can be quite difficult to get it moving again. And so that's why building in some accountability in some fashion, it doesn't have to be a coach like me. It could also be a peer accountability partner, somebody who's actually serious though, because, you have to make sure that you're both, as serious about it. But that accountability piece can be really huge.
True. And I love what you said on on the study on habits. And I agree, because then a lot of the time you get your brain to the point of oh, this is me. This is what I usually do. I am a writer. I am someone who it's from the book Atomic Habits, where he talks about if you want to really have a habit, you want to own it as an identity. You're oh, I'm someone who writes. Oh, I'm a writer. I'm someone who does this regularly. And I remember, again, as you were describing, when I was first writing my book, I did have this routine of I'll wake up, do my morning routine, then I go to this coffee shop and write. And then I went on a trip. So I think that was how I wrote my first 10,000 words. And then I went on a trip, came back, the cafe, the outside area that I used to write on was gone. They basically just pulled all the chairs in. And that's kind of where I started derailing and not having that habit anymore. But I remember the ease of writing just because of that, of oh, my brain is oh, it's I think I went out at 10 a.m. Oh, it's 10 a.m. Let's go and write. So then it got that sequence easier. And I love what you said also on imagining that you are doing this for the service of your reader, because that's just such a powerful way of thinking about hey, it's not about you. You're just a vessel basically for the knowledge. You learned all of this, and now you're a vessel, and then you get to teach the next person. So I love that part of your process as well. So hopefully for anyone who's listening or watching this, you guys are getting a lot of really, really good ideas as you're going through the writing process. And I guess I also wanted to ask, what's your favorite part of all of it? Whether you're writing your own book or helping other people write their book, what is your kind of the moment of oh, I love what I do. This is why I do this. This is every single day I'm excited to do this because of this.
Wow. I think, there's so many elements of it that I really enjoy. I very much enjoy the early stage when we hit that, oh, that's it, and we really figure out what this book is and what the unique perspective is. That's really exciting. It's really exciting to see people accomplish their goal through the writing process. I think it must be because this instantly came to my mind, and I thought of a particular client. When my clients write me with a screenshot of a reader review or they'll send me a video of them opening their book, I often will get emotional when I see that. I sometimes I cry because I just know how much went into that and how it's bigger than the book for them. It's this real mission, and that process is also a huge investment in themselves, really. And I think also what makes it so special is it's most of us in our everyday lives, we're not even in our own bodies and heads for 5 minutes. We are always distracted. We're always directing our attention outward. And they spent months in deep thought in the service of other people. And that is just such a massive accomplishment. And for them to start seeing the results of that. So, I had a client that 3x'd her speaking fee recently. I've had clients that have doubled or tripled their revenue. Clients who were delivering small workshops, now they're getting hired by corporations to train, dozens or hundreds of employees. Clients who are, in huge demand for the keynote stage. Clients who are changing individual lives through their nonprofits, those types of things. I think it's that celebration that is so cool and exciting to me.
Very, very cool. I love that you love basically all parts of the process, like from the beginning of like that aha moment to them getting the reviews, getting the accolades, but also it's the daily process of them kind of being retrospective of like, oh yeah, I learned this, I did this, and like now I get to write a book about it. I love it. So then I want to ask my favorite question on the podcast, where especially as AI, if we're able to perfect cloning, if we're able to get better and better at like making sure that we duplicate someone perfectly, if there were 10 Stacys, 100, 300, a whole army of you, how would you want to impact or change the world?
I think I would want to grow my coaching team so we could support more authors. I think that's been a key challenge over the years for me, is finding people who can match like the level of skill and that coaching mindset that I bring, and like all of the things. And I've been really fortunate. I have an incredible team, and but that's taken time to build. It takes a lot of time. One of the key women that works with me on my team, we've worked together for over 10 years. That's taken it's been a long relationship, and we've really grown together over the years. So I think if I could really duplicate myself, I would. And it sounds like I'm like, wow, that sounds kind of egocentric, but it's really because I just want to serve more people and get more authors out to market and get more books out in the world. And again, the books being like a catalyst for something that matters in the world. I think that would be so cool.
I love that. It's basically amplifying what you currently do to do a little bit more good in the world. Thank you so much, Stacy. So how can people find you? How can people connect with you? How can people stalk you as well as I have? How can people connect with you?
I'm everywhere pretty much, but I show up the most on LinkedIn at Stacy Ennis, and Instagram, which Instagram I talk more about like Portugal life and those sorts of things. LinkedIn is where I do a lot of my book sharing about book writing and things like that. I'm also at stacyennis.com. That's where you can learn about my coaching. You can check out my group program, private coaching, and please reach out to me. Let me know that you found me on this podcast, because I love getting to talk with people who found me through different interviews, and just know like it's never too early to reach out to people and share your idea. I know what a huge step that is for people to even just send the first email and say, hey, I want to write a book. So just know that you're always welcome to reach out, and I love hearing from you.
Amazing. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been lovely speaking with someone who loves writing as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time, and it's always a joy to get to talk about my favorite subjects. So thanks for the conversation.
I hope you guys enjoyed learning more about Stacy, and her links are going to be in the bio wherever you're watching or listening to this. And if you are watching this, make sure to hit the like button, hit subscribe wherever you're watching or listening from, so you don't miss any episodes of the Scale You podcast. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and remember that small steps matters. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.